And let me just introduce our wonderful speaker for today. So our first speaker is the co-founder and executive director of Animal Empathy Philippines, AEP. She has more than 6 years of experience in farmed animal advocacy, such as doing outreach events dedicated to increasing awareness of action for farmed animals and community building in the Philippines. So she believes that Filipinos have the capacity to extend their compassion and rationality toward eradicating farm animal suffering. Without further ado, please welcome with jazz hands, Kate Lupango.
Thank you, Steph. Hi, everyone. Yeah, let me just share my screen. I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay. Can you see my screen now? Okay, let me just minimize. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Kate, and for this workshop, I'll be discussing about cultivating empathy and evidence and why building a community is crucial in farm animal advocacy in the Philippines. So my agenda for this workshop is to try to answer these 3 questions. So first is why we need to do community building. And then second, I will try to answer what is the current approach of animal empathy or AEP when it comes to community engagement. And then lastly, what are the 3 takeaways for community facilitators? Okay. To start off, I would like to have this activity. So this activity, I call this the art of asking better questions. I believe that as far as knowing the answer, it is important to craft better questions, because if we have a way on asking a good question, definitely we will have a more clear answer. And because of this, so throughout the session, I'll be discussing some ideas about community building and the approach of AEP. So what I want you to do is, if you have notes there, or if you can use your phone, is take note of the questions that will arise throughout my presentations. This can be topics that you want to explore, or even reflection from your experiences, and even the emotions. So what are the emotions that arise through the presentation? And after the session, so maybe if you have time after the end of this day, you can think about how you can improve those questions. So when you ask question, what you're trying to answer, what is really what you're trying to answer on those. And this is a very key, important aspect actually of how I think about this movement, how I want to work on this movement, as well as the approach that we do in Animal Empathy Philippines. Okay, so with that, I'll try to answer first the question, why do community building? Let's start first with understanding what is community. So if you ask people about what is community, they will somehow share, they will try to answer this kind of things. So first, a community can be your neighborhood, right? So people that close to you, that lives within your vicinity. And then community can also be people that you have shared values or common interests. Like, for example, there are people that volunteer within the community that they shared values, for example, helping children or helping people, those who are in need. And then other types of community can be in the form of shared problems. So there are issues that they're trying to work on, for example, poverty, education for all, accessibility for all, or rights or human rights. And then there's also a sense of identity. So meaning there are types of community that they consider is the value of identity, meaning I'm part of this group. But that doesn't mean that they have, let's say, shared values. They can be only just a part of membership. And the reason why I want to explain the different varieties or different explanation of how community is defined is, first is community is very complex, meaning it depends on how people engage on that community, or even how they see its value. How I see community building is, I'll explain this into 3. First is the shared values, meaning people will want to be part of the community because they agree with the values that is inherent in the community. For example, the values that they have is they want to spread the knowledge that they know. So those people who agree on this will definitely would want to be part of the community. Second is the sense of belongingness. So sometimes I know it's very hard to work on the area that you feel like you don't have the support that you have. So if you're part of the community, you get the sense of belongingness that I'm not doing this alone, and I have the support that I have. And lastly, how I see community is it's very goal oriented, because yeah, sometimes you can do this on your own, but you know that you need the capacity, you need more people in the fight that you're trying to solve in. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. And yes, I don't know what happened. Can you see my screen? Okay. Can you see next?
I can,
Okay.
yes, I see it.
Okay, sorry about that. So why community building is important? So I explain what is community. So why is it important? First, it's about connection. So we connect to different types of people that we don't normally engage with, right? So it's actually, these are the people that we know that we will not meet in the normal circumstances. And the last one I want to reiterate mostly is igniting our power. So community building is about igniting the power that each individual has. That's why we want to do community, because we acknowledge that we have a power, for example, to change something, or even to provide the support that we need to individuals. And lastly, for community building, it's about transformative change. So there's something that we need to change, and we know that this is the place that we can provide the support that we need. And I think this sums up. So this a quote sums up what community building is and why is it important. It says that if you want to go quickly, you can go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And that actually really resonates for me, as well as the importance of doing this work. Next is, what is animal empathy, or AEP's approach to community engagement? So first, I'll try to explain in a few minutes the situation of farm animals. So animal empathy works for farm animals in eradicating the sufferings of the farm animals in the Philippines. But it's important to know first what the situation of this. So this is in a nutshell. So this is a recent study. So in our world in data, how many animals get slaughtered for meat every day, you can see here. And for example, for chickens, that's about 202 million. We have pigs for 3.8 million. But if we try to zoom in closer, in the Philippines, chickens, swine, and ducks are the most land farm animals that being raised for production. And you can see here the graph of the increase from 1961 to 2021. So you can see how much we consume for this type of animals. Another as well is getting to know the situation is, where do animals in the news? So it's important, how is it represented? You can see here, let's say for chickens are represented aside from food as an entertainment. So you can see here cockfighting is really a big deal in the Philippines. Another is rabbit. So rabbit now is it's not only for pet, but now it's a pork alternative in the country, given the outbreaks in swine and as well as in different animal diseases. And then you can see here as well as some of the development infrastructures or developments that are being done in the Philippines. When we talk about animal sentience and animal rights, Philippines are still need to increase its demand for this, or the call for this. So in this study, so the presence of animal welfare legislation or animal sentience is still very low when it comes to farm animals. So somehow we are leveraging when it comes to companion, but we see that there's still a need to increase this kind of conversation, especially on the legislation part. But with that, we can see that actually Filipinos wants the best for animals. You might be surprised. But in a recent study that conducted, so they interviewed Filipinos about if they agree that animals, not only companion animals, should have the same importance, or it is also important for me to consider. So you can see here that Philippines actually also consider farm animals as important to them. And here you can see as well as what type of animals. So somehow Filipinos see the same way for farm animals, the same way as companion animals, which is, I think, is a good indication. How we see this, so animal empathy see this as an opportunity. So given I think it is also in the nature of Filipinos to really care for others. And particularly, we call this bayanihan. So this is actually somehow our version of community building. This is very natural for us. So for those who are not familiar with bayanihan, this refers to our communal desire to show kindness for those in need. This is a very good example of this. This is Filipino who are transferring houses to other areas. And the bayanihan is now translated into other things. So you can see here, you can see it in disaster reliefs, in calamities or other types of disaster or other types of casualties as well. And this type of culture also resonate with the values that we have. So Filipinos values, I'll mainly discuss about 4. First is malasakit or concern. This is showing concern to the people or the Filipinos. Second is pagdadamayan, meaning compassion. Third is kusang loob or initiative. And then last is pakikipagkapwa-tao or socializing to people. And why is it important for me to discuss the Filipino culture is also the same way that we approach community building in Animal Empathy Philippines. And before I proceed to that, some important notes. I'll be presenting the approach that we do. And I think it's important, especially for those who are doing community building work, is to adapt what resonates to the following slides that I will discuss. This doesn't mean that you need to follow all of this, but again, going back to the activity, it's important to ask these questions. Maybe translate some of the questions that you have to the community that you're currently working on. Second is, the complexity of community building. So, complexity meaning that this can be, you might have different stages as I am, or the community that I have. Sorry. Let's Last is analyze the benefits and risks. This means that all communities have benefits and risks. And when you do community building, it's not, sorry about
That's okay, Kate. Take your time.
sorry. And then third is the benefits and risks. That means that okay, I'm all good. Okay, thank you for waiting. Okay, benefits and risks, what I meant by this is when we do community building, sometimes we see all the benefits, right? This would help the animals, this would help the people, but you have to understand what is the trade-off, what is the risk of doing this. And that's important to note when we do the approach. So in summary, animal empathy, we are a community that unites Filipino animal advocates to end farm animal sufferings. And first, when we do community building is AEP serve as facilitator. What I mean by this is, I'm so sorry. Let me.
It's okay, Kate. You can go ahead and drink a glass of water. And while we're reading, I noticed that part of what AEP does is that it asks different volunteers to join and identify what skills they have, what they want to do for AEP. And I've seen the community grow. They actually have uh, a page on Slack where they communicate with each other. And I am just so impressed that AEP is such a big community online. We've seen several members of AEP joining AACA 2023. So there are several members of AEP supporting AAA in this conference. And I think that's part of what AEP is good at, like asking people to be part of this community, to join and participate. And I really appreciate that. Okay,
Thank
back
you,
to you,
Steph.
Kate, if you're ready.
Yes, I think I'm ready. Okay, going back to this, yes, when we do community building, that doesn't mean that we are, let's say, the leaders of this community building, or we are, we take ownership on this. What we meant is AEPs usually serve as the facilitator, meaning we listen to people, and then we try to use this framework to observe, plan, action, and reflect. And what we want out of this community building is, this is a good example of it. We want them to thrive. So from the seed, we want them to be flying on their own. So we don't want to gatekeep as well as community members. And using again the analogy of bayanihan or Philippine culture, I use this bayanihan for animals. So this is the four approach that we do. First is listen to learn. Second is engage to mobilize. Third is impact driven. And then last is empowering community leaders. So when we talk about listen to learn, that means that we know that in this space there's a lot of advocates already in this place. There's a lot of people who know more about what we're currently doing. And we acknowledge that. And I think in the community, it's important to learn about those people. And that's why we have discussions or events that definitely focus on that. And I think it's also important, let's say, to provide a safe space for everyone, and then designing the community with them. To mobilize. So this means that we need to invite people in different levels of participation. So we understand that people are busy, and then sometimes people would have certain types of interests that they just want to be participating in. And that's okay. Because I think in the movement, first is we need to have people that is moving everywhere. Because given like the amount of concerns or problems that we need to deal with, we need those type of mobilization. So we try to also engage our members in different types of things. For example, they can volunteer on our events. They can do article, or even have presentation of what the things they try to do, they want to do. And I think that as a community facilitator, it's important to I think it's also important that you amplify the power that those people already have. Third is impact driven. So given that the magnitude of issues in animals, it's important to have this discussion that what are the best ways to help animals. So we do have these certain things that we do. For example, we have this discussion on trying to brainstorm some of the effective ways that we can help them. This can be also through gathering informations and analyze the data that's being presented. And then next is empowerment of community leaders. So this means that, as mentioned, we want community members to thrive, and we want to support them at their capacity. So this is a good example as well of recent community engagement that we do is in alternative proteins. So we help community members who wants to start their own project. So meaning they want to, let's say, build their own community. So we're okay with that, and we actually providing more capacity with them in this action. And then last, I want to answer is what are the three key takeaways from community organizers? I'll summarize this into three main things, but it's about power, values, and strategies. So in this, when we talk about power, I have two guide questions that you can think after the session. First is your role focused on increasing organic connection rather than controlling connection? This means that do you see that building more activities would build connection rather than letting people build those connections or having that natural connection? Second is your role centered about empowering community members to develop their own power? This again boils to community building is not about the leaders or even to AEP. So community building is about the people and the members in it. So I think it's important to really understand and analyze the position that you have, especially if you're a facilitator or organizers. Second is values. As mentioned, people see the value of community because they align with the values. So maybe it's time to think about the current community that you have. Does the community that you have serve and unite still the community members, or is there things that you need to be changed about that? Third is about strategy. So strategy is within their community, how can you develop the skills and experience of those community in order to achieve the goals that you have? And yes, so thank you. Thank you for listening. So if you want to support our work, here's our website and Facebook group. And then you can also scan this code if you want to know more about Animal Empathy Philippines. And yeah, maraming salamat, and I'll be happy to answer some of the questions later.
Thank you so much, Kate. As always, your talk was so informative, and I was taking notes because I wanted to learn as well and internalize, especially about those questions that you asked about power, values, and strategy. And before we go into the questions, which we will be collecting, by the way, because I've been reading some of the questions in the chat and they're very good ones, let's jump right over to our next speaker. So can we please spotlight Van, if she's ready? Hi, Van, if you're in the room and you're ready. Okay. We can spotlight you and you can share your screen. There you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Before we listen to Van, let me just introduce her. So she is the founder of Peace Vegan School, which offers holistic education, including classes on veganic permaculture, among other things, with messages of compassion for all animals woven seamlessly throughout. She has 2 farm schools, including an animal sanctuary of 40 residents. She will share how she found a way to connect with her local community by identifying their concerns and needs in order to speak their language and activate their compassion. So without further ado, let's listen to Tui Van Mo.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So today I will share with you my journey about 16 years of being vegan and being animal rights activist in Vietnam and also in France a few years ago. It's about awakening compassion and appreciation of life. Firstly, I'm sorry for my English because I used to use French. So today I try my best. Well, it all started when I was about 4 years old. I drew all kinds of animals in my notebooks, and my parents found that I have a great affection for animals and plants. When I was in seventh grade, I attempted to incubate a chicken egg myself, but no matter how hard I tried, I still failed. And I found it difficult to give birth to a new life. Meanwhile, in the wet markets, I saw people slaughtering chickens for meat on daily basis. Um, the way people and lives of living creatures is truly brutal. In just a few seconds, a chicken throat was cut and a life disappeared. The next truths about eating animals surprised me and affect me heavily. I asked my mother to allow me to stop eating meat, but at that time, like almost Vietnamese mother, she thought vegan diet will give a lack of nutrition, and she forced me to eat meat again. And when I was 17 years old, my father passed away in a traffic accident. At that time, well, I have 2 years of depression, and people thought I might have gone crazy because of my father's death. And I have had a lot of time to contemplate life and death, as well as the fragile boundary. And then I moved to France. I went to university in France when I was about 19 years old. One day, I remember that I saw a video showing what is happening inside the slaughterhouse. And at that time, I decided to stop eating meat from that day. For you, if you want to check out the video, you can go to YouTube and see this video. This video really shocked me. And very quickly, I found a vegan group near the city where I live in France. And that vegan group later became the largest animal rights organization in France. At that time, I was still a student, so I took part in activities with my vegan friends on weekends. And I consider this is the most exciting and happiest time of my life. And I am truly grateful for my vegan community in France. Well, in 2011, I started bringing information about veganism to the community in Vietnam through some pages on Facebook. But I realized that the debate about veganism will never end because ignoring is still born and reborn with each new generation. After that, I didn't want to waste my time on online debates. So I started to learn about vegan cooking on my own. And my wonderful journey began clearly from here. When I returned to Vietnam, I opened a vegan restaurant to show how delicious, healthy vegan food is. Well, just like you know, in Vietnam and also in all around the world today, the use of toxic chemicals in food is very common. So I have seen that it causes many sickness, disease, and also cancers. And by using only natural ingredients, my vegan restaurant at that time received so many orders that I had to work very hard from early morning to late at night. And then I had to stop working in my restaurant for a while and switch to teaching vegan cooking. Well, Year after year, gradually, I built Peace Vegan School Vietnam, which for locations in Hanoi, Saigon, Bắc Giang, and Hà Giang province, including 2 farm schools where I organize courses on veganic permaculture, vegan gastronomy, art classes, summer camp for children, as well as raising my 40 rescue animals, dogs, cats, rabbits, pigs, chickens, ducks, goats, and so on. And until now, well, my work allows me to meet thousands of people. And I realized that everyone wants to be healthier in a world where we have had so much industrial food. And through my classes, I spread the message of love for natural and living creatures to the participants, to my students. Some of the pictures about activities like the music concert, outdoor activities, farm schools with children and their parents. Too fast. We are very lucky to live in natural and have the connection with nature. And also we have organized more than 100 vegan cooking courses in Vietnam, throughout Vietnam, from the north to the south. And also I have 2 animal sanctuaries because I have a big love for animals from when I was a little younger. So right now, when I have all the facilities, yeah, to create the sanctuaries for them, I can say that I have my biggest dream is to create the place for people and for animals to live in harmony. And also we organize events with inspiring guests, like in the photo, he's a world searcher, a very inspiring vegan, you can say activist, yeah, in the world. And also we give back, like when children learn that it takes 16 kilograms of plants to produce just 1 kilogram of meat, they understand why being vegan can help reduce the sufferings of both animals and also of plants. Here, we want to say about the self-love. It's completely different from consumerism around the world, and especially in Vietnam. It would be very difficult if you want to convince people to become vegan just for the love of animals, because people care nothing about their own personal interest. Things like that. I used to struggle to find animal-loving vegans in Vietnam. Sounds funny, right? But because it seemed like they were mostly vegan or vegetarian for religious reasons, or because their doctors told them to reduce the meat intake. As a result, people don't really care that animals also need to live. And however, if we go from self-love or mindfulness to realizing how precious life is, we will be able to convince people to appreciate the lives of all beings. I really problem to change the slide. So by bringing mindfulness and conscious consumption into my classes, into my activities, our Peace Vegan School team builds a community that is more conscious about the suffering of all beings. And thanks to this, the community has developed sustainably for nearly 10 years with many diverse classes and activities. So lastly, thank you, the AACA team, for creating the opportunity for me to connect with many animal rights activists across Asia. And I hope and I will be more than willing to host you all at my vegan farm school in Vietnam very soon in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Van. That was a beautiful story that you shared with us. Thank you for being vulnerable as well about what happened to you when you were a kid. What also was impressed upon me, what something that I picked up from what you said was that you at first wanted to have a vegan restaurant, but then it became so tiring. And so you decided to switch to just teaching vegan cooking. And I feel like that's an important shift because it teaches us that for us to honor our gifts and talents, we have to honor our limitations and needs as well. And I feel like that is an important lesson as well if we're trying to build a community that's going to last, because it's going to be very hard to sustain if it's something that we're doing that is also draining us. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and sharing your story. That is amazing. I want to go to Vietnam. Can Han host us when we go to Vietnam and visit Van? Thank you so much again, Van. And we are hearing, can you read what's on the chat box? There are a lot of comments there. A lot of people are saying that you've built something beautiful where you are, and your practice of love is truly inspiring, according to Julia. Now, we are ready to ask both Van and Kate a few of our questions. So if it's okay, can we please also spotlight Kate? Okay. So let's see. So we have a lot of questions in the chat, which we will ask later. But for now, I would like to ask Kate and Van, what do you do if different members of your community have conflicting goals or beliefs? I think this is also one of the questions asked in the chat. If members of your community don't always agree with each other, what do you do to make sure that the community stays intact? What steps do you take? Have you experienced this before? If you'd like to share your experience as well, have you seen this happen? Maybe Kate, would you like to go first?
Okay, sure. Yes, definitely. I think it's kind of normal for the community to have conflicting beliefs and goals, because the community consists of individuals, and those individuals definitely they have their own perspectives and beliefs. And as a community, it's important. I think I'll start first with the preparation. So when you establish or facilitate a community, you need to like provide or design the space. So this space is open for discussion. And then if this opens for discussion and beliefs, it also should be respectful. So respectful for those people that shares your ideas or doesn't agree with you. And I think another important thing to do is who are the people that you let in your community. So as I mentioned earlier, community is about having shared values or shared interests. And if you let people who doesn't agree with, especially on your shared interests, that would conflict the community. So I think as facilitators, it's important to be mindful on that, to lessen somehow those type of conflict. Because if the community have the shared values, even if they have different goals or belief, they would understand. And sometimes I guess it's also important to know that maybe those members, this is not the right community for them, and that's okay. So because there's a lot of communities, I think that would cater to their needs. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I think, yeah, that's very important to accept that not everybody is going to belong to your community sometimes, and that we need to have expectations and boundaries along the way. As much as we want to keep the door open, if our values don't always align, and it's not going to be a safe space if that's the case, then I guess we need to set boundaries so that everybody else in that community is going to stay safe. Thank you so much, Kate. Van, would you like to answer the question as well?
Yes, thank you. Can I share my screen because I want that people can see my answer too if I pronounce it not okay. Thank you. Can I share my screen? Mm. Well, as a group that practice mindfulness, meditation, our Peace Vegan School team is a meditative group. We have many methods for listening and solving problems together. Firstly, we will listen, but not to answer, but listen to understand and make the speaker feel less suffering. That's for the first. Second, we have meetings together and share frankly about the problem. The third, we allow mistakes. As an organizer, I often observe and let the group members do as they want for the first few times. Then the consequences will have them to realize whether that method is effective or not next time, and we will learn from experience and not repeat the same mistake. The fourth, we use mindfulness to avoid unnecessary arguments. When we find ourselves nervous or having angry emotions, we don't make decisions. It helps us avoid many unnecessary mistakes, and our team often read together this meditation poem. I will read it. Why be angry on each other? Close your eyes, look into the future. In 300 years, where am I and where are you? And this poem means that we should not lose friendship and connection just because of temporary opinions. If we understand this, then when we are about to have a conflict, we immediately stop and return to mindfulness. And mindfulness means focusing on beautiful and effective things right in front of our eyes, like cooking, planting trees, planting flowers, teaching children, etc. And there are countless more useful things that can be done rather than arguing about our different opinions temporarily. And most of our opinions come from overthinking and illusions. When we sit still, breathe evenly, and be mindful, we can see the problem more clearly. And then the old methods can be changed by new and more effective methods. So that's my answer. Thank you for listening to me.
Wow. Thank you, Van. And I agree with the comment in the chat box. I think it was Anam that said, I can see how Kate's and Van's methods can supplement each other very well. We can emphasize that we have in common what we have in common and mindfulness while also drawing boundaries. I love that we can take more spiritual and more practical methods at the same time. And I agree. It's like different strategies and different approaches are there. And then we can use them in different ways, in different situations. And I'm really glad that we have both Van and Kate together in this discussion. Thank you so much. Okay, so our next question would be, what would be the dangers of not thinking of a strategy about community building? Because I can see that, Van, you have a structure for how you can deal with conflict, as you've shown us in your when you shared your screen. And Kate, you also have a strategy. So what do you think are the dangers of not having a strategy early on when you try to build a community? So anybody who wants to answer first?
Okay, I can go first. I think in terms of danger of not strategizing when it comes to community building, I think it depends on, we want to make sure like it's still organic in that sense. So if we structure it in the, like when we started, it doesn't sound a very community building, right? So it's kind of very structured in that way. So I think we need to have the right balance, or I would say like having the first intention on what you want to strategize. For example, I think in AEP, when we are doing community building, one thing that we did is we try to understand. So the strategy is to try to understand what are the things that we don't know about the space, or what are the things that we don't know about the people that we want to be part of the community. And I think going this again to my presentation of asking a good question rather than the strategy first. Because if you have a good type of questions, that would form the answer that can lead you to strategy, rather than putting all the framework first and then try to see if that would fit. So we try to answer that first. That's the way we do strategy in terms of community building. I think it's important to have that early in the advocacy, like as well as who are the people I want to be that should be part in this community, who are not part of this community, and then asking how can we engage those people, what are the barriers for those people who don't have access in this community, right? And then what is the intention? I think that's also important when we do. And if you don't ask that kind of way, it would kind of be difficult to do the strategy. And then especially if you're now a big organization, you expect be a big community, you expect people to do the things that you want to do. And that can be now like create a strategy that you want, because you already build some of the foundations or information and build the community and trust that you have from the people. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. And there's a question in the chat as well as to what makes a question, like, do you have an example of what is a bad question and how you can turn it into a good question, just so we have a better understanding of how to frame a question, so that it becomes a good one.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good point. When I say question, so sometimes there are questions that can be answered by yes or no. And yes or no, or like stating the what it is. I think a good question, for example, in AEP again, is our foundational question is, let's say, which animals need help the most? This is a very important question for us, because we need to be I think this aligns to the strategy that we have, that we know that everyone has limited time and resources, and we also know that people don't have as a different different perception or realities that we have. So at asking the question which animals need help the most, that means we need to understand what's the current situation of animals, as you can see also as well in my presentation. And I don't think there's a bad question. It depends on answer that you're looking into. Because if you're looking into, for example, how can I help the most? My goal is to help animals the most. So I want to eradicate suffering for all animals. So what are some of the questions that I can look into, like good questions? And I think that goes into process. So there's a definitely you have some normal questions. So for example, what, and then trying to understand the why. So why not, and then expand on those. And yeah, I don't think there's a bad question. It's just like building on trying to deepen the questions that you have rather than answering it with yes or no.
Thank you for the clarification, because I'm also worried, like, am I asking good questions right now? Okay, Van, if you'd like to also add to this, to answer this question, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. I will also share my screen. Well, in Vietnam, for example, it's very common for dogs and cats and also other pets to be stolen, to be eaten, and to be sold on the streets. And there are big groups of animal lovers that they just want to buy, save, or redeem those animals from the slaughterhouses. I understand their emotions and sympathize with them, but this is not the best way. Dog and cat meat traders have even more money to continue their work, and it makes the situation worse and worse. And more dogs and cats are trafficked nowadays. So doing activism with our strategy will cost waste of money and time, cause members to lose faith in the goal, and increasing the suffering of the animals and also for us. So that's my answer for this, just with a example. Thank you.
Thank you, Van. And I love how you actually, like, there is a prepared answer for all the questions that I have. I think like you have the most, this is the most prepared I've seen a speaker in any conference, and I love it. This is very true. Without a strategy, many members will actually feel burned out because they keep doing the same thing over and over and yet not see results. And so the strategy part, the strategizing part, is of course very important when we try to build a community. I would like to ask one more question before we move on to the questions of the rest of the audience. And this one is not as it doesn't go too much into strategy, but a little bit more about language, so that we can understand the Philippines and Vietnam a little bit more. So one important factor in community building is speaking the language of our own communities for better understanding. And I think this is also part of the presentation of the both of you. So how would you translate community building into your own language? So what is the direct translation of community building, or what is the contextual, how would you translate this in your own language? And what meanings of community building are either lost or added because of the translation? So what changed when you translated the word or the phrase community building? So how does speaking our own language change the meaning of the phrase community building? So I just want to understand, words reveal a lot about our own cultures. And I think if we try to understand what community building means in our own languages, that would be great. How about Van? Would you like to go first? Or maybe Kate can go first while Van is preparing an answer.
Okay, I can go first. Okay, so in terms of community building, speaking our own language, yeah, definitely this is an important thing, especially on an animal advocacy in this space in animal justice movement. It's important to translate or to communicate this issue in our own language. So in the Philippines, there's a lot of language, not only Filipinos. And I don't think there's a direct translation. So I try to think of this, but it doesn't fit. So for example, I when I think about this question is, I translate community building as panlipunan pagpupundar, which is not the exact exact translation of this. But I think how I see community building similar is to bayanihan that I've mentioned earlier. So bayanihan has the same concept of community building. It's sharing, people coming in together, building a community, helping those people in need. So that's the true essence of bayanihan. And I would say I like this more rather than translating community building into Filipino, because first there's a certain history in bayanihan. It's very the history of bayanihan it's very beautiful, and how it continues to evolve. So now it's not just transferring one house to another. You can see it in everywhere. And it's very Filipino. So if I said bayanihan, people already know what it is and what is expected for them. And I think that's the beauty of when you say languages. So not exactly translating it, but looking on what is already existing in our country. So what are the terms or the languages that we actually use for this, and try to try to communicate that in the animal justice movement. And yeah, I think that's how I would try to answer that question.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I think there's a follow-up question from Anam, and she's asking, is bayanihan the same word or concept in different Filipino languages, for instance, Bisaya? And actually, although we understand Filipino words more or less throughout the country, there are 120 languages. And bayanihan is a Tagalog word. It's we call Tagalog Filipino. Actually, there has been dissent about that. Some people in the Visayas do not like that Tagalog is the Filipino language, and I understand that very much. But yes, bayanihan is a Tagalog word. It is understood, but it is not exactly the same word. It is not local to other languages in the Philippines. So I guess that's the answer for the sake of brevity. Yes, Van, I'm so sorry. I was talking to you a while back. Would you like to answer about the translation of community building?
Yes, thank you. I will share my screen again. So for community building in Vietnam, that will be a job that of listening and understanding. In Vietnam, the big and large campaigns are not effective. We can spend a lot of money on events to build a community, but after the events, the community is not sustainable and can disappear quickly. In return, in Vietnam, the media of ear-to-ear communication, nonviolent communication, or grassroots activities will help build a more united community. We create a place where people feel supported and have their deepest feeling heard. And from there, we can build a much stronger community. And it takes time and cannot be rushed. So building a community in the Vietnamese way is to go deeper into listening and making members bond together like a family. The community at that time was no longer a simple community. It had become a big family of brothers and sisters, or we could say that it's like a group of close friends. So that I create the community of Peace Vegan School Vietnam team, and it lasts for now, I think, nearly 10 years, and very, very united, and we have the support from each other. Really, really good. Thank you for the very good question.
Thank you so much, Van. That's amazing that you acknowledge that it takes time, that this is something that cannot be rushed. This is something that cannot be faked. This is something that requires a lot of work and a lot of emotional energy and a lot of connection. That is wonderful. Thank you. Can we also highlight, Roxy, as we go into the Q&A and ask the questions from the audience? Roxy, have you seen a few questions from the audience that you'd like to ask both Van and Kate?
Yeah. Just give me a second. Okay, yeah, I've collected a few questions. So I'm gonna start with Kate because Kate started the speech first, so I collected the questions at the front. Yeah, so first question, I've got it from Anam. Can you address the risks of community building and include some examples?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've mentioned the important things to note when doing community building is, yeah, the benefits and risks of it. So, first, I think in my experience being part of the community, sometimes it is important to be sensitive in as to the participants or the members. So, for example, the risk of maybe falling out with the participants because we ask too much for them, given that, for example, they still do this somehow as a volunteer, right? So they do this on their free will, and the risk is if we demand too much with this members, so that might be a risk, for example, for them to not to join, as well as to see the space as not welcoming, or even the cause that they believe in the first place, they might fall out of that. And another risk that I see in doing community building is being too like closed-minded with other things. So for example, we share the ideas, that's why we build a community. But I hope does that resonate, sorry, with discriminating other communities or other people with outside our community, because sometimes I think we are too focused in our community that we don't see we might harming others. I think that's important aspect of it. And I think last in the community, the risk of what I notice, yeah, in terms with participation and people sacrifice their time, their resources, and there's still also a risk in that. So if they don't align with the things that you want to do or the values that they have, the action, that's why I reiterate at the first place, it's important who are the people you're letting in your community. Because if you don't like create boundaries on that, those people that would act in behalf of the community, that can be a big risk, because you don't know like what will happen, or what maybe the action that person do is actually bad for the community. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Thank you, Kate. And I like how you put it, that when we sometimes build a community, we forget to ask certain things or be sensitive to certain things that we cause harm. I guess that's what you've been saying, that we can cause harm sometimes to ourselves, sometimes to the members of our community, sometimes to people outside of the community if they're discriminated upon. Thank you. Van, would you also like to answer the question?
Yes. Yes, I can answer the questions now.
So are we asked, because that question was during Kate's speech, so I'm wondering if do you want me to repeat the question again, Van?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, so Anam said it was Kate specifically. So Steph, should I just finish all the questions for Kate and then we'll have a round for Van? Yeah, is that all right? Yeah. Okay, sorry, you're mute, Steph. I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, I'm just seeing it right now in chat that it was for Kate specifically. Can we ask a question for Van this time? Is there a question that we can ask her?
Yeah. So there is a question from Poppy that's for Van. They want to ask how people respond to your veganic permaculture. Would love to hear more. And what does veganic permaculture look like? And I think Han, our Vietnamese coordinator, is very kind. They translated it into Vietnamese.
Yes,
So,
and can I have 2 minutes to prepare my answer, please?
yeah, yes, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can circle back to Van. Meanwhile, we can ask Kate another question. If you have any Roxy from the chat.
Yes. So let me see. Yeah, there's another one from Mudra. I hope I'm pronouncing it okay. They'd like to ask, how do you deal with infighting, quarrels amongst the community? That is something that I personally deal with a lot and want some perspective on it.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think for context, so Animal Empathy Philippines we're relatively new, so we're just in 2 years. And as of now, we don't see that the kind of big infighting in the movement in Animal Empathy Philippines. And but we see different how we see it right now, it's more on discussion. So discussion of there are people that believe in certain things, and then other is in this type of this kind of approach. Because I think most of the people in our community, they are more evidence-based or information. So most of the time people would want to have a discussion, for example, what is the best way to approach this kind of things, and then they would want to provide information, and then they would counter it with other types of information. And then based also on their experiences. I think it's also important to highlight and not to discredit the experiences that those people within our community have. But as of now, we don't have that. And I think right now the role of AEP as a community facilitator is to ensure that this will be the safe space. So that's why we're creating some metrics or rules to ensure that the community feels safe. And if there's infighting, what would be the response? Like, what are the things? How can we sanction as well those people within our community? But yeah, as of now, I can't say any big infighting in our community right now.
Thank you, Kate. If you want to put your conflict resolution skills to good use, I can invite you to certain groups and we can put to the test how you can resolve conflicts in those communities. Just in case you're up to the challenge, let me know.
Okay, that's good.
I want to make sure that we're giving Van enough time So I want to tell Van that if she's ready, she can switch on her camera, and that's how I know that she's ready to answer the next question. Okay. Hello, Van.
Hello.
Oh,
Yeah.
before you answer the question, Roxy, can you repeat it just so you remember the question?
Yeah, so the question for Van is how people respond to your veganic permaculture. Would love to hear more about it. And what does veganic permaculture look like?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, veganic permaculture means that we do not use any animals in our methods, in our practice. We do not kill animals for food or clothing because, we have some like plant fabric. Sorry Hạnh ơi, lụa tơ tằm thì dịch là gì ta em? Silk.
Silk.
Like, yeah. So, well, we do not encourage people to use silk, but lotus silk or the other natural fabrics come from plants. Secondly, we do not use animal manure as compost, but we use plants and other vegetables or veggies for compost. And also, we do not harm animals with chemicals, pesticides, or herbicides. Even though they are organic products, we don't use them. And also, we do not dig in the soil. We used a method like that. We call that no dig method. No dig. Yeah, like we do not dig in the soil. And my students love the courses of permaculture, and I have organized more than 40 courses in Vietnam already. With, we can say that nearly 200, yeah, 200 participants. Yeah. And for me, it's really a method of non-violent. We can put non-violent into gardening too by doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Van. And I used to have a garden myself, and I was always bothered by how a lot of gardening groups have tips on how to kill pests. Even though I wasn't vegan at the time yet, I didn't want to do it as well. I felt like these are animals I invited into my garden because of what I was doing. And then I was gonna take their lives. There was something that didn't sit well with me with that idea. And I'm so interested in what you said, the no dig method. I'm going to research on this because I think I'm gonna apply it when I build my garden again next year. Thank you for this idea. I think I'm gonna put this to good use. Okay, so unfortunately, that is all the time we have left with our speakers, but it's not over yet. I want to hear your opinions about our session today. So let's share the link onto chat. Please fill out the form that Roxy has pasted onto the chat box because we want to hear your opinions, everybody's opinions in this room about what went on today. So let's give everyone about 3 minutes to fill that out. Can everybody see the link in chat? And so while everybody's doing that, while everybody's sharing their opinions on that opinion form, I would just like to say thank you so much to Kate and Van, and of course to everybody who attended today. That was a wonderful session where we learned how to better foster community spirit in our movement. And I love that we learned more about not just community building, but community building specific to each other's countries. I think it's also special that we have two approaches that can complement each other as we learn from Van and Kate. So these approaches can work together in so many different ways. We can take away things from what Van has said and what Kate has said and put them together in different situations, mix them together like a good cocktail. Am I allowed to say that? Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. Please don't